Julia Kempton, and this is our week's story from the Economic Development Group at NYU Stern. Welcome back, and for those of you just joining us for the spring semester, welcome to the weekly news segment. Today's story is going to revisit a topic we addressed in the fall: women entrepreneurship in Afghanistan. Last year, around 80% of economic activity in Afghanistan was informal, and women accounted for over 71% of the workforce in the non-agricultural and formal employment sector. Since the remainder of Afghanistan fell to the Taliban in August of 2021, their ultra-conservative social policies have prevented women from attending university and working outside the home. Many of the gains made by Afghan feminists in the preceding decades have been seemingly reversed, and many social activists had fled the country. The United Nations Development Programme's Socioeconomic Outlook for Afghanistan 2021 to 2022 estimated that restrictions on women's employment will reduce Afghanistan's GDP by an additional 5% this year. No country formally recognizes the Taliban as the legitimate government of Afghanistan, and many countries and international organizations have restricted or withheld aid accordingly. The way this ties into economic developments is that Afghanistan's economy, until 2021, was very dependent on international aid. In 2019, the World Bank said Afghanistan received $4.28 billion in aid and humanitarian assistance. Its GDP was less than $19 billion. By another metric, almost 80% of the former government's spending, including many salaries, was foreign funded, and aid made up 43% of GDP in 2020. In September, international sanctions cut off the country from accessing foreign financial institutions, and the US froze $10 billion of Afghan government assets. Since then, the economy has essentially been in free fall, with a refugee crisis and the logistical difficulties created by the expulsion of most civil servants, exacerbated by supply chain failures and cash shortages. In Kabul, some people have reportedly begun selling their household items. The UN estimates that the economy contracted 20% and expects per capita income to fall from US $500 to US $350 this year, which would push 97% of Afghans below the poverty line. Some have made the argument, however, that the sanctions preventing some aid from reaching Afghanistan, instituted in response to the human rights abuses of the Taliban, are harming women more than they could help. Not only are women entrepreneurs and business owners harassed while working outside the home, but economic desperation has triggered an increase in child marriage and child labor. In November, the UN estimated that more than half of Afghanistan's 38 million people would face food shortages this winter. And while the sanctions have imposed horrible hardship on Afghanistan civilians, Taliban officials have still essentially refused to negotiate on any terms that might see the sanctions lifted. If Afghan leaders would rather see their country devastated than make concessions, the efficacy of these sanctions is called into question. A number of articles discussing this were included with this week's newsletter, and the debate about the role of sanctions in economic development is one that will continue to be addressed through this segment throughout the semester. In the interim, on January 18th, the UN Development Programme and the European Union announced a $16.9 million Livelihoods Recovery Initiative to support women entrepreneurs in Afghanistan. The Livelihood Support Initiative is part of ABADAI, a UN response to the crisis in Afghanistan, which aims to benefit more than 8 million people over the next 2 years, including 23,400 entrepreneurs. This ties into UNDP Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 5, no poverty, and gender equality. That's the news. Thank you for listening.